Good evening. Welcome to another episode of OmenG's Stupid Scary Stories. Tonight I'll be reading once again from Connecticut Ghost Stories and Legends by Thomas D'Agostino and Arlene Nicholson, part of the Haunted America series. Just about at the end of the book. Now we're in the section entitled A Brief Collection of Ghostly Grimoires. Eagle Hose and Hook and Ladder Company number 6. Heroes are interminable. There are such heroes in every city and town. They hold regular occupations and can be seen shopping or walking in the park. But when called upon, their bravery rises above any measurable scale. Many of these people are volunteers within the community they reside. Volumes of praise are not enough for their undying pledge to the township they serve. In some cases, these champions of the people are compelled to protect the public long after they have passed on themselves. There are many reports of public service buildings being haunted. At the Eagle Hose and Hook and Ladder Company number 6, there seems to dwell such a spirit that remains within the firehouse as an eternal guardian of the people still on duty. The company's proud beginnings were born of a tragic fire that started in the local opera house on Main Street in 1871. This made the town realize the need for an organized fire department. On August 24th that same year, a handful of prominent young citizens formed the city's first official fire department. They had planned to call the division Ansonia Fire Company number 1. The first captain of the 25-man crew was F.L. Clemens. Funds were limited and the search for affordable apparatus was on. They soon located a reasonably priced parade hose carriage from Newark, New Jersey. William Williams built the carriage in 1859 for a New York City fire company that disbanded in 1865. It traveled from New York to New Jersey, eventually making its way to Ansonia. The apparatus bore the inscription Eagle Company number 6 on its side. The removal and replacement of the logo would have been laborious and costly and would also have destroyed the beauty of the carriage. So the men decided to name the company after the inscription on the side of the wagon. The company still owns that same carriage, now renovated, and carries the honor of being the only fire company named after a parade carriage. A hook and ladder carriage was added in 1879, and the company changed the name to the Eagle Hose and Ladder Company number 6. The same moniker the company boasts to this day. From 1871 to 1914, the company used manpower and horses to serve the public during emergencies. Main Street, along with every other street, was not paved. Mud in the warm months and ice in the colder seasons made it an arduous task to transport the apparatus to fires. Once at the scene, the cumbersome and weighty ladders burdened the already taxed firefighters, making the endeavor of putting out a fire more exasperating. This changed in 1914 when the department purchased a Maxim fire truck powered by a 91-horsepower 6-cylinder engine. A few years later, it purchased a Seagrave ladder truck, bringing to an end the cumbersome apparatus of the previous century. Many noted citizens served on the department. Ansonia's first mayor, Arthur H. Bartholomew, served as captain. Later mayors Franklin Burton and Lockwood Hotchkiss also served among the ranks of the ever-growing company. Today, 100 dedicated members selflessly serve the public at the Hose Company. The company has had 3 homes since its inception in 1871. Its humble beginnings hail from a building on First Street before moving to Main Street in April 1879. The present 2-story house was erected in July 1904. The basement was originally a canal used to supply water to the local factories. As the tides of progress changed, the canal was no longer needed and the lower section of the building was turned into a beautiful room. This room is now a museum of sorts for the fire company, ornamented with memorabilia hanging the company's past. The space, now called the Canal Room, moonlights as a function room for special events the fire company holds from time to time. It is also reported to house an unseen tenant. People in the building have heard strange noises emanating from the basement when they are certain no one is down there. Items are also moved from one place to another and voices can be heard echoing through the room. It seems that whatever or whoever is there acts up mostly when there is a minute minute audience. Many occurrences happen when there is but a single occupant in the firehouse. The company is a volunteer fire department, so many times the building is scarce of the living. Perhaps when there is more than one person in the building, the strange noises are attributed to a living person. The occurrences happen largely in the canal room and the second floor of the firehouse. Maybe it is a former member who has some sort of personal attachment to the room by way of some of the mementos that adorn the architecture. Whoever it is certainly feels attached to their duty. There are many pictures and names of the firefighters that once were part of the company. If it is one or more of these heroes, then they are probably just there to make sure the company still maintains the top standards it has been known for throughout the years. If this is the case, you can be certain that there is always someone on watch at the Eagle Hose and Hook and Ladder Company number 6. Not much to say about that. Pardon. Visited it, went to go see what was going on. Like they said, there was a couple of firefighters. One of them had lost his life inside the firehouse. Not by a fire or anything like that. He had contracted some type of a sickness. I think it was pneumonia. And, he had passed away while sleeping. And he's never left. It was said that he was one of the most heroic of the firefighters during that time period. There's no real records that indicate when it was that he served, not even a name, but there is some historical evidence of a firefighter having died in the firehouse. Roswell didn't have anything to do with it. For some strange reason, he seems to leave firemen and honorable people alone. I think you need to be some sort of dishonorable person for Roswell to have any type of effect on you. Let's move on to our next short grimoire. Downtown Bristol. Lights are bright, but not necessarily from the lamps. Downtown Bristol is known as a ghost town, but not because tumbleweeds roll with the desert wind that whistles an ominous tune through the streets. Downtown is quite alive with the hum of everyday life. It also holds much of the long-gone remnants of the past within the walls of the more modern architecture that sprang up in the ebb and flow of a great flood in 1955. Although you would never have guessed by looking at the town today, Bristol was once an isolated woodland barren of any human existence. Once part of Farmington, it was known as the West Woods until the first settlers arrived in 1720. In 1742, they became the New Cambridge Parish. This lasted until 1785 when they joined the New Britain Parish and became a town called Bristol. The Pequabuck River was ripe for industry and many factories sprang up along its banks. If you can name it, the product was probably produced in Bristol. Urban renewal was a craze in the 1960s, but Bristol did not have to wait that long. The flood of 1955, the flood of the century as it was called, wreaked major havoc throughout New England. On August 13th and 14th, 1955, Hurricane Connie, although no longer a hurricane threat, dropped several inches of water on the region. 1 week later, on August 19th and 20th, Hurricane Diane charged through town, bringing more rain to the already swollen rivers. This proved too much for the Pequabuck River, and the banks brimmed over into the streets of downtown Bristol, demolishing or damaging everything in its path. As a result of this terrible incident that nature ruthlessly unleashed upon the region, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers created flood control systems throughout New England. The Pequabuck River was rerouted to underground conduits, occasionally rising above the earth before spilling back into seclusion. Other buildings were later demolished to make way for the Center Mall, which saw a brief moment of prosperity before losing its vendors to the thriving Route 6 corridor. The mall was eventually razed to make way for future plans. Over the past half century, many of the buildings have become homes for strange and inexplicable occurrences. Even the municipal buildings that were erected in the wake of the flood have taken on a curse of some sort where they began to mysteriously fall apart and malfunction. A lot of money has been put into the structures in the hopes of preventing them from crumbling altogether. Residents and visitors go downtown to see and experience countless apparitions of ghosts and other phenomena that accompany the various haunted places. Downtown Bristol suffered many casualties and losses in that flood. It is no wonder that there are many lingering spirits still looking for the familiar surroundings they once knew before the courses of nature brought about a change in their scenery and, in many cases, their lives. Take a stroll around the city center and stop into a few shops. You might come in contact with one of the ghosts that occupied their time downtown. Even if you do not meet a revenant from the past, Bristol is still one of the more interesting historic places in Connecticut, having few spirits around to prove you're not hurt. Now, I've been to Bristol several times. I've been to Bristol. During my days as pesticide technician, Bristol was one of my most common stops. And like you said in the book there, a visit to downtown, perusing the shops, will definitely bring you into contact with the paranormal entities that still roam the world, living upon the land. Well, not living, obviously, because they're dead, but, they still think, in some cases, that they're alive. I ran into one particular spirit, or spirits, I should say. It was a small family. I remember getting out of my truck to go into this little hot dog shop that was on, I believe it was Main Street, someplace downtown. Excuse me. It's only 9:23 and I'm tired. Wow. Anyway, the family. It's two children, mother and father. I think there were two little boys. Yeah, it was two little boys. And they walked into the hot dog shop ahead of me. I saw them walk into the shop, which is what kind of made me decide, oh, well, shit, family's going in there to get some hot dogs. They must have good hot dogs. So let me go and get myself some hot dogs. I remember getting out of my truck, you know what I'm saying, and going towards the doors. Now, most of the shops in this area had, the big glass windows and stuff, so you could see right in. And as I got up to the window, I'm expecting to see this family that just walked in. No. I didn't see anybody except for the people that worked there. And so, I walk in the door, and, they have one of those little bells on the top of the door. It's not, they didn't have, one of those, doom, doom, little ding-ding-ding, little thing that, when you open the door, it hits. So the person behind the counter says, "Did you just come in here?" I'm like, "No." "Well, I just came in right now, but what do you mean?" "No, did you come in before?" I'm like, No, I didn't come in before. I thought I saw a family, 4 people walking here, which would maybe come in here. He says, "Yeah, that's been happening most of the day today. The bell keeps ringing, and I turn around and there's no one there." I said, "Well, I saw a mother and a father and 2 young boys walk in here right before I came in here, but I don't see them in here." He said, "Yeah, a lot of people say they see a family walking around down here into several different shops. What are you having?" I was like, "I have a couple of dogs, footlongs, ketchup, mustard, no onions, no relish, and spicy mustard if you have it." So I'm sitting down. I decide I'm going to take a break. I don't want to sit in the truck and eat. I want to eat sitting. inside the restaurant, not all cramped up with a steering wheel in my face. So I'm sitting there and I'm eating my hot dogs. Ugh. Excuse me. Long day today. And all of a sudden, I hear the bell ring. Now, I'm sitting facing the counter, so I'm not looking behind me. When I hear the bell ring, I turn, and what I see is the door closing, but no one is there, which I thought was strange, right? So the guy at the counter is like, "Yes, see, this is what I'm talking about. It does this like almost every day, all day." It's like, that is weird. It's not windy outside or anything, so I know it wasn't the wind. Just at that moment, a menu that's on the counter slides off and hits the floor. Now, there was no reason for it to slide off and hit the floor. It's one of those like plastic covered ones, so it's nice and it's thick and it's heavy. So there was no reason for it to just like slide off and hit the floor, and there was no wind gust or anything like that. So it was perplexing to say the least. All of a sudden, I get this chill. Now, mind you, it's summertime, obviously, because I'm spraying for mosquitoes. You wouldn't spray for mosquitoes in wintertime, so it's not cold. But I got this really cold chill up my spine. It was like, ooh, ooh. And then the door opened, the bell rang, and it closed. I was like, that is some weird stuff. So I finished my hot dogs, and before I left, I decided I was going to take a picture of the front door. Just to take a picture of it, right? When I took a picture of the front door and then looked at my, picture on the phone, I noticed this like area of distortion around the doorknob, as if like maybe a hand was taking shape. It was weird. It's hard to explain, unless there was something on my lens, which just so happened to be near the knob of the door, which could have been the case. It didn't necessarily have to be a ghost, but I just found it to be a bit strange that after the door had opened and closed and I took this picture, there was something near the door handle. So I said goodbye to the, hot dog shop owner, walked out the door, and I got in my truck. I was sitting there, checking my route and everything, preparing my GPS, getting it all set up so I can get to my next stop. And when I look up, the family that was supposed to go, that I saw walk into the store, was just standing in front of the store. All of them looking at me. Like, not moving, just not smiling or anything, just looking at me. And then slowly they all raised their hands, simultaneous, like they were synchronized hand raisers, and they all pointed at me. Which gave me this feeling of utter terror. So I'm like, why are ghosts pointing at me? I didn't do anything to these ghosts. I don't even know these ghosts. I highly doubt they know me. I'm a young person, so they know me. Probably died in that flood, 1955, like so many other people did die. They vanished shortly after they pointed at me, and I drove away. One of my stops that I was going to next had 2 more stops to do in Bristol. I had a total of 3 that day. I did 1, had my hot dog, and I was on my way to the next 2. Now, the second stop was away from downtown. It was kind of in the woods. You know what I'm saying? The woods. It's a long, dark road. And I say dark because it was a very wooded area, so not a lot of sunlight came through. I started getting nervous. I remember I was, live streaming on Instagram at the time. And it was weird because all of a sudden it went from like this little town, you know what I'm saying, with like civilization and shit, to this dark ass road from like the movie Wrong Turn. I'm like, this is weird. It went from being paved to being gravel to then being just dirt. and all bumpy and unfinished. I'm like bouncing around in my truck and shit. I'm like, am I going the right way? This can't be the right way. This doesn't seem like it's the right way at all. But the GPS was saying go this way. So I kept on going. And I ended up at the end of this long road, and there was a driveway. Well, the road ended up turning into the driveway. And there was a wooden fence, like an old wooden gate, blocking entry to what I could see was a house, about maybe 100 yards away from this gate. Now, I don't see any sign of life. I don't see any people walking around. I don't hear any dogs barking. I don't see any signs that people live here. There's no cars or anything like that, which isn't uncommon for me to pull up to a property and the people who live there not be home. They don't need to talk to me, on a schedule. I go, I spray, I leave. But something about this house just seemed strange. It was really old looking. You know what I'm saying? It was definitely an old colonial home. But what I mean by old looking is it looked like nobody had lived in it recently. It needed the paint redone because it was a white house, but it looked all grayish and shit. And like you could see like some green and brown on it. Like it had algae and dirt just caked up on it. I'm like, this is weird. So I look at the, little mailbox, which is an old-time mailbox, and the address, checks out. GPS is telling me I'm where I'm supposed to be. I check our other, software that we use to verify locations and shit, to check the lot and property lines and everything. Everything lines up that this is the property that we're supposed to be at. Well, that I'm supposed to be at. So I get out of the truck and I walk up to the gate. And remember, this is summertime. It's nice and hot. It was a hot day. It wasn't a cold day. So the fact that I could feel this really cold presence around me started to kind of like freak me out. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it at all. So I push the gate open. I drive my truck in. I pull into the driveway. Now, mind you, most of the houses I go to will have like a garage. This one didn't have a garage. The driveway just ended near the house, like towards like the front. It was like a roundabout in the front of the house. In the center of this little roundabout was like a statue of sorts. I pulled up to the house, and it looked like there was someone walking around inside the house. Now, we're supposed to ring the doorbell and everything to let the customer know that we're there, just in case they may have any questions or concerns or anything. So I rang the doorbell. Nobody answered the door, which I thought was odd, because usually people will answer the door. So I don't think anything of it. I go to my truck. I start mixing my chemicals and shit, filling my blower with chemicals. I put on my mask and glasses and gloves and all that shit, throw my backpack on, and I start spraying the property. Now, the way we usually do it is we'll do the outer perimeter first, and then we'll come back and then we'll go around the house. And if there's any pool or other stuff in the center of the yard, we'll hit those things as well after we've done both the perimeters. Now, while I'm doing the outer perimeter, I happen to look up at the house, and in the window, I see those 4 fucking people that I saw at the hot dog shop. Standing in the window, all 4 of them, just looking at me. And they pointed at me again. This time, things started feeling really strange. I had this real uneasy feeling. I wasn't liking it at all. So I hurried my ass up, and I decided, which is not normal for me to do because usually I'm extremely thorough, I decided I'm not spraying around that house. Once I finished the outer perimeter, I hightailed it back to my truck, threw my backpack in the trunk, closed the back of the tailgate, and I was on my way to get in the truck when I heard this low growling noise. Now remember, I told you I didn't see any dogs at all. The only people I've seen so far are these ghostly people that I saw in downtown Bristol, which is weird because how the fuck did they get back there so damn fast? Right? How? They're staring at me. But anyway, I hear this low rumbling growl. Right? And I turn to see this huge, dark black dog, fiery red eyes, snarling, just looking at me like he wants to bite my fucking head off. It's about maybe 20 yards away. And he's just sitting there, hairs on his back raised, face baring his teeth, just looking at me. I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm at the truck, but for a moment, I was paralyzed. Paralyzed with fear. I wanted to run, but I was afraid that if I did run, that somehow this thing would catch me. So I start easing my way towards the door of the truck, ever so slowly. That's when I remembered, damn, I locked the truck, and we can't leave them unlocked, just in case someone comes along. You don't want them opening it up and getting into chemicals and shit. State laws, Connecticut, for pesticide control and stuff like that. It's a mandate. You have to lock it. If an inspector ever were to come and try opening your door and it opens, you get written up for that shit. Potentially lose your license. So, this dog is moving towards me as I'm moving towards the door. I reach for my keys. I stick it in the door. Thank goodness there's only 2 keys on my keychain. One for the toolbox and the other one for the door. Stick the key in the door and I turn it. When I turn it, the dog perks up. Like he heard it. Like he knows. And I'm trying to get the fuck away from it. Now remember, I came to this wooden gate, which was closed. I closed everything behind me because it's just what you're supposed to do. Just in case there is a dog, I don't want it to run off the property while I'm doing what I'm doing, even though it's not supposed to be outside while I'm spraying, but some people don't listen. Anyway, as I jump into the door, opening the door, the dog starts coming faster. He's closing his distance. He's moving like 5 yards a second. I jumped in that damn thing within 2 seconds. By the time I close the door and I'm starting the truck, the dog is right at the door. And he's barking. He's growling and barking and banging up against the side of the door. And I mean, he's hitting this truck hard. Shit's shaking. I'm panicking now because I'm like, I gotta get out to open this gate so I can get out of here. I mean, shit, I can't sit here. I've got other things to do. Besides, I don't want to get eaten by this fucking dog. So I make a decision. I step on the fucking gas. Run right through that fucking wooden fence. Break it. Drive over the wood pieces. This dog is chasing behind me, but he stops at that gate. I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and it's just standing there. And as I get away, he turns, looks at me one more time, and then walks back towards the house. I drive down that fucking bumpy ass road, fucking bouncing all around and shit. Hit the main road. Fuck out of there. Whew, it was fucking freaky. I decided to say that there was nobody, that there was a dog outside the next property, and I just decided I'm done with Bristol. I'm getting the fuck out of Bristol. Bristol's just weird. I don't want to go to the next house and there be another fucking ghost house with a ghostly fucking devil dog ready to eat me. So yeah, that's my story about Bristol, folks. It's definitely got some hauntings going on. I want to thank you all for joining me for tonight's scary story. Less stupid than it is scary. This is actually something that did happen when I was doing my pest control shit, and I figured I'll break the normal rigmarole of funny stuff and hit you guys with some actual supernatural paranormal experience that I've had. I'll probably do that for the next couple of stories I tell you. Lay off a bit of the funny and add a little bit more of the actual supernatural experiences that I had, because I have had quite a few. So I figure it's time to share some with you. But once again, like I said, I want to thank you all for joining me for tonight's episode of OmenG's Stupid Scary Stories. You all take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again next time.